You can hear the dogs barking next door. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nothing But Worry with your co-hosts Lance and Bonnie Ash. I'm here, and so is Bonnie.
Oh God, I'm here again.
And the people who live down the hill from us have dogs that bark nonstop, 24 hours a day. Oh, you can hear them. Maybe you can hear them too. Anyway,
I have to run a fan in the bathroom so I can relax in the bath. Otherwise, it's.
I know something I meant to ask you earlier. What was it like sleeping in my bed?
I really couldn't sleep in your bed this morning. I tried to, but Peter was on the other side of the wall putting up dishes, and it sounded like there was a thunderstorm. And then when I just started to begin to doze off, I heard on the other wall. It was Peter opening the door to go out and warm up his car.
So,
And I thought, my God, how the hell do you sleep in this room? I think you ought to get one of the high-powered fans that are in the kitchen, take it in your room. It would block out a lot of the sound.
so let me ask you this: does it give you any kind of sympathy for me in there when you're making noise out here?
Lance, I've always been very cautious
I know,
about
but
what I do.
I know, but sometimes I hear a cabinet slamming or whatnot.
It isn't slamming, it's just closing. And
Ah,
I'm very careful about these things. I push them closed, and I'm very careful. It just sometimes something will just slip, or it's an accident. I remember one time you came out and yelled at me because I had put the kettle on to boil.
I don't remember that,
Yeah,
but I can
yeah.
understand. You know, in the old days, we came and went through the back door,
Yeah.
and every time you and the kids would come in and out, like getting groceries out or something, the air pressure coming through the house would make my door rattle to my bedroom. So I put a little tiny screw in the door frame so that when the door closes, it made it tight and it wouldn't shake at all with any air pressure. And that little screw is still in the door frame.
I think at one point we also put some kind of insulation lining around your door trying to work. I did it around mine. It helps that little air bump on my door too.
Yeah. When you're asleep at night and I have to go in and out of there,
I hear you.
I can the gap at the bottom of the door, the difference in the air. I mean, with the central air going, air is pouring out of the bottom of your door, and the just the air going in the house alone will keep your door shut, not latched, but up
Well, I
against the
do have the
frame.
fan that's facing. It takes the air from the vent towards the door. So that could be that too.
All right.
Boring conversations we're having tonight, Mr. Ash.
Well, we have a couple of topics actually today. We were going to make a list, but just didn't get around to it.
You told me you were going to do it.
Well, I am a busy man.
We inherited cookbooks this week.
Okay, we'll start with that. My sister's dragging my mother off to Montana, and they're gone now. So
Yeah, they flew out this afternoon, as a matter of fact.
I can't believe she didn't call me to say goodbye. That's odd. My mother, but anyway,
Well, she came over last weekend. That's another thing that we did.
yeah. Well, anyway, the plan is my mother's going to live with my sister out in Montana, and they're going to at some point sell the house, and then my sister will half me out of my half of the money. Let's see here. So anyway, I asked before you leave, can I have? I had asked previously about certain cookbooks, which I did not get in the pile that she gave us. But I asked for this butcher knife. I told you about all this last week. But anyway, we got the cookbooks and we went through them, and I donated a shitload of them to the library this afternoon. But the two that I really wanted, which was the Southern Living Cake Cookbook and the Southern Heritage Cake Cookbook, weren't in that pile. But there was some other stuff that was in there. We kept those. And what else happened?
Well, I run a maximalist household, which means we have a lot of stuff here. So everything has to have a place in our house. And I have a designated spot underneath the kitchen island for cookbooks. And when you decided to keep 4 or 5 of the books that they gave us, I didn't have room for them. So this week I had to pull out all the cookbooks and decide what I was going to get rid of. And so I had to make space. But once I started looking at them, I realized my cookbooks aren't in that great a order. I mean, sure, I know where they are, but they could be in better order, like all the cookie cookbooks together, all the bread books together, you know? So I did that, and I gleaned another 2 dozen books out of my stash and got rid of them.
Well, I told you I have some shelf space in my room if you need some overspill.
No, we've got those kids' books that we've been going through, and those need to be put up, so you can do that.
Yeah, at some point I need to do that. So, when I dropped off the cookbooks at the Oglethorpe Library, they had a book sale going in the little rec
really?
room thing, and I was going to, well, this is my chance to go in there and see what they have again. Well, they had gotten rid of everything except for the children's books, and they had thousands of them. That's all they had left was children's books, and they had a sign saying, "Take all you want, they're free, we're getting rid of them."
Oh, wow. Did you put the cookbooks in there with them?
No, I just put them on the counter so they could go through them.
Okay.
There was like 3 or 4 ladies in there. Anyway,
Those ladies will probably take them home.
well, good. I hope so.
I hope so, too.
There's a bunch of stuff in there. One of the books that I think we kept. Well, no, this was already in Bonnie's collection already. It didn't come with my mother's shit. But when I first became a vegetarian, there used to be a health food store downtown. Been there for years, called Phoenix Health Food or something. And when I first became a vegetarian, I went in there and I said, "Do you have any cookbooks or any kind of something to help me get started as a vegetarian?" And this person recommended the whole grains. Was it whole grains cookbook, something like that? And we still have it. I hadn't seen that book in years.
Yeah, I put your name in the front of it. That's the reason I set it aside for you. I hope you went through the books that I got rid of. I don't think I got rid of books that you would have wanted.
I didn't even look at them. I should have.
Oops. Oops.
Well, I can always go back down there and snag them back somehow.
Uh-huh.
So why don't the next thing on the list is the only other thing on the list. Why don't you tell them the big news for the week? This happened.
Wednesday morning.
It happened the last day of last year. It happens New Year's Eve.
No,
So
yeah.
tell them it was Tuesday morning.
Lance gets home at a certain hour. Prior to that, Peter had been in the kitchen cooking. I asked him what he wanted, went in there to start his meal, put it in the oven, and I am no sooner out of the room than I hear pop. And I walked back in the room and I'm like, did something just blow? Something just sounded like it blew up or something. And I got looking around, I couldn't figure out, and I looked at the stove and it was dead. Pushed a couple buttons, went back to the fuse box, flipped the breaker several times. The toggle was loose on it. I'm like, oh, fuck. Get on the phone with my dad. He tells me how to change out the circuit, etc., etc. We end up, end of the day, after the 4th call, I finally get an electrician that can come out same day. They send out these 2 guys. I tell them what happened. They look at my fuse box. They go back into the kitchen. And they said, we need to look at your stove. They pull the stove plug out of the wall, remove the panel on the back. And they said, here's your problem. Your stove blew your fuse. And it sent a surge up through your electric panel. Your electric panel has 2 sides in this model, and everything on this side of the panel is compromised because of the surge. We need to replace everything. The cost is such and the age of your home being 22, 23 years old, this panel has a life of 30 years. But because of this, we need to replace this half. Pull all the circuits, replace everything there. But because of the age of the house, we're going to recommend that we either replace or refurbish your panel. They said refurbishing it will give you an extra 10 years of life. Replacing it will be another 30 years. We can give you a guarantee, blah, 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 blah. On both of those. And then they gave me the prices. Jesus fucking Christ. One was well over $3,000, and the refurbishment was in the mid $2,000 range. And that included this, that, and the other on both of those. I had to make a decision. I said, I want you to do something then. I want you to document what's happened, and I would like for you to put it on the invoice. That this is what you saw happened, this is what you're doing as a result.
Did you explain that
I explained that the stove was 3 months old.
No, what I mean is, did you already say on the recording here?
No, I didn't. I should back that up. 3 months ago, I purchased a new stove because my other one was dying. It has been fixed, I don't know how many times, but the last time I spent like $250, $350 on a stove that cost us $400. So 3 months ago, I bought a stove. All in it was about $700. That includes a cord, and it came with free installation. They come in, they put the thing in, and I've been having problems with the stove intermittently ever since. But the return policy is 24 hours on an appliance for Lowe's. Anyway, so the eyes would heat up, and then they would automatically just kind of lower, then go back up. The stove had an inconsistent heating temperature inside, that sort of thing. Well, when the electricians looked at the back of the stove, they pulled it off, and what they found was that the installers had taken, it's technically a 3-prong cord with a grounding. They took this giant cord and they separated the 3 prongs plus the grounding, and instead of attaching it to the stove correctly, the 3 prongs went on 2 prongs. The third was supposed to have been wired inside the stove in a certain way, and the 4th thing was supposed to go onto a prong, but it had gone into the wrong spot because the prong for the grounding thing had gotten broken off during the installation process. So not only did they wire it incorrectly, they also didn't ground it properly. So in the course of having a stove, which has an extremely heavy door, when you close the door, the stove would move a little bit. And apparently at some point or another, that wire for grounding shifted. And since it wasn't connected in place because the caddy that holds it in place was broken, the hot wire hit the outside of the stove, sent a surge up through the line, blew out that circuit, and affected the rest of the fucking electric panel.
So Lowe's people installed the stove wrong.
Lowe's,
and now
it's worse. It's worse. Lowe's contracts to somebody. So I had to get on the phone today with Lowe's after sending them an email and talking to the local manager. And they have to file a claim with the people that they subcontract with. And it has to go through their claims process, and an investigation has to be done before their insurance will pay out. So our electricians took photographs before and after. They were also kind enough that they rewired the stove correctly, but they couldn't ground it in the way that it was supposed to be grounded. So they improvised the grounding, set it up with electrical tape and other things to keep it as safe as possible so I can use the stove for the next couple of days. When I can finally get an appliance guy to come out on Tuesday, which is the absolute earliest, to come out and fix the thing that is wrong, the harness that's supposed to keep everything in place, and hope that nothing happens between now and then and things get loosened up on the stove. I have to pay out of pocket. We ended up getting the price down to $2,200 and change, and it's going to be another $250 easily for this guy to come out. I think it's $95 to walk in the door. Then he charges for his time, and then the piece. So we're having to do all of this out of pocket. And I'm still, at this moment, with a stove, I'm a little wary of.
Anyway, so.
But the electricians did do something for free. They fixed the wonky light in this kitchen because it irritated them.
Anyway, so it burns my ass that
You trust
you
them to
can't
do
trust
something.
anybody to do anything properly. This gigantic corporation, Lowe's, and they make these big television advertisements. We're just friendly, small town folks like you. We're here to help, and blah 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 blah. But we're going to subcontract to some fly-by-night jerk-offs from Mars that are going to come in and do
From
this thing.
Buford.
So anyway, that was a lot of fun. And I've reached the point where I'm just numb. It's like somebody says, well, in addition to the brain cancer, we also have to chop your dick off. You're like, okay, I'm sick of it at this point. Just whatever.
Thank God they haven't had to take your dick off yet.
So anyway,
We'd have to go visit that special store down the road. Oh, Lord.
What else is happening? I had a fun night last night. Very few people there, and freezing cold. Not too much mail until the very end of the night when Amazon showed up and just completely filled up the area where we keep the mail ready to work it. And there's this whole notion that, well, we can't hire anybody unless we have data on a computer screen, the actual physical evidence of our eyes that the mail is not getting done and these people are being worked like donkeys in a coal mine. That evidence, that doesn't count. We have to have digital data. What the data really is for them to get their bonuses. And if I was the President of the United States, I would say I'm taking personal control of the post office. It's an emergency situation, and nobody is getting a bonus. And if you don't like that, if you're in the,
Kiss my ass.
then you can quit. We were told years ago that if we didn't like things, we could quit. Well, the same should apply to the big shots. You don't like not getting a bonus? Quit. I don't care. We're not here to create a profit so that you can wet your beak. Anyway.
Did you know that Walmart managers can make up to 200% above their salary in bonuses?
And how much do the grunts get? Nothing.
$14 and up an hour if they're lucky. So they work the people to death so that they can get their giant bonuses.
I had to go to Walmart.
Glue.
I went. Yeah, it was New Year's Eve. I had to go out and get some crap. Anyway, so I'm walking through Walmart, and this couple is walking towards me, and the woman had her nose reattached to her face.
Oh my god.
There was like a square scar around her nose, sort of indented.
Jesus.
And what passed through my mind was their entire marital history and how grateful she must be to her husband for sticking with her. Because what's he going to do? Well, I'm sorry, but your nose is deformed now. I'm leaving you. I mean, he would have to be the biggest asshole in the universe. And, I'm sure she's like, I'm so sorry about my nose. It's okay, sweetie.
Who knows? Maybe it's like that woman I used to work with. Her husband smoked, and he dropped a cigarette between his legs while he was driving and went to bend down to get it and steered into a woman coming across the lane and maimed her, paralyzed her for life. So she has to put up with this asshole who still, to this day, as far as I know, has not stopped smoking. They have to pay this woman part of her salary because he's such a loser he can't keep a fucking job. So, settlement.
Yeah, I think I'd have to leave him.
He's also the one who shot his own brother-in-law. Her brother. They were out hunting. So, he can't go deer hunting with a gun anymore. He uses a crossbow.
Well,
Lubes.
I had I had a girlfriend years ago, and when she was a teenager, I guess it was, in Florida, her mother and stepfather had to pretend to get separated so that her mother would get like an extra bit of money from the state or something, yeah. And he had to pretend to live somewhere else. Yeah. Meanwhile,
What brought that up?
because if I was having to pay part of my money because the husband was liable for somebody else's, I'd say, okay, here's what we're going to do. If we are going to stay married or stay together, we'll pretend, or we'll just get divorced, and it'll be pretend divorce or something. Yeah. And that way it won't come out of my check.
Yeah, this was after he had accidentally shot her brother while deer hunting.
Oh, me. But, anyway. What else has happened this week? Our daughter came over to visit. She picked out some of the cookbooks.
Yeah. She took all the Julia Child stuff from your mom's collection.
My mother had all these high-end cookbooks. Martha Stewart, Julia Child.
Not a page turned, not a page stained, nothing marked. She had them to own them.
Yeah. One of them was a Fannie Flagg cookbook.
That was terrible.
Who was she? She was somebody famous back in the 50s or something, right?
I don't know. It was a terrible cookbook.
But none of those interested me. The ones that interested me were the old classic ones.
There was one that was over 100 years old.
There was one that was from 1902, and somebody had handwritten pages and stuck them in there, and you could tell they were written with an old steel nib pen. And the writing was so perfect that you couldn't read it. I mean, it was like just so perfect cursive from 100 years ago. You're like, what? Back when people made weird cues.
I think we did those in primary school, sweetie.
It's like a backwards 2 or something.
Yeah, that's what they were.
I remember being a little kid and being, adults write with this special way. I can't wait to learn that I can write like that. And I would pretend to write in cursive like this. And so, this year you're going to begin to learn to write in cursive. Oh, hooray, what fun. Now, children, we're going to practice writing the letter I. In the top is a 3-line graph, and the
And of
top
course
part of
you're
the I has to,
ornery and obstinate and wouldn't do anything according to instructions.
but the top part of the I has to go into this grid, and the little hook thing has to go down here, and we're going to write this laboriously over and over and over in
20 times,
class,
50 times.
and then we'll move on to the lowercase I.
Do you know that Reed had cursive writing and Peter did not?
Yeah.
He would have benefited from it.
His handwriting
His
to this day
handwriting
is
is juvenile.
horrible, and it's all because they screwed him up with. I quit writing in cursive in 4th grade because I'd had a belly full of it. This I've told the story before. This will show you how archaic my parents are. I mean, it's like they come from a different century. Because I was taught, okay, well, this is printing and this is writing in cursive. I can't remember how it goes, but my dad would say, so you're going to learn to write. Well, I already know how to write. Yeah, but you're going to learn how to write. What are you talking about? To them, writing was cursive and printing was like non-cursive, or something like that. I can't get it straight in my head now, but that was typical. They had different terminology for things than other people used. You know.
Didn't help they were hill folk.
Reminds me, one time, my dad came home from work and my mother had words with him about something.
Had words with. There's an old expression, dear.
Well, anyway, later my dad comes to me and he says, "Your mother told me. She told me that she caught you and your girlfriend in your bedroom." And the way he said it, just
It was dripping.
Yeah.
Disgust.
The bed. It's a euphemism for everything that we don't stand for. Iniquity. God. Speaking of which, Bonnie, I had heard of this guy's name, but I thought he was some 19th century entertainer. Henry Enfield, a British comedian, and he's got this TV show in Britain where they mock.
The 80s.
They mock old,
1980
like
and
post-war
1950s.
attitudes, and there's a video on YouTube. Women, know your limits. And I'm not even going to take, because this video is so short, I don't want to ruin it for you. But look up Henry Enfield, "Women Know Your Limits." It's really funny. Oh my God. Oh dear. And
I'm sure it would be taken to heart by a lot of the misogynists out there today.
I am. I'm disappointed that David Mitchell is doing this murder mystery show now, because
It puts him into that next zone
yeah,
of British careers.
yeah.
Did you see the fake British opening? I sent you a video. It's half of British shows start like this.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
You gotta watch it. It's great. Somebody did a parody of the way half of British shows open. But yeah, there's a certain point at which actors kind of cross over and they leave one portion of their career behind. I
Right.
suspect that Mitchell's getting to that point.
Well, that's what I feel. I'm being.
David Jason did that, you
Yeah,
mentioned.
years ago, Bonnie and I watched the
And
Inspector.
John Thal did that too.
Years ago, Bonnie and I watched the Inspector Frost mysteries, and I had no idea. I mean, to me, David Jason was that character, the mustache, the older guy. I had no idea that he'd done comedy for years and years back in the 70s.
We stumbled across, what was it, Open All Hours?
Open All Hours, great show, and he's this
Fabulous.
goofy little guy. And I was
Who
like,
was Ronnie? What was it?
Ronnie Corbett was the stutter,
One of the two Ronnies.
his stuttering uncle that ran the shop. But and I was like, wait a minute, that's the same guy?
Yeah.
And now David Mitchell is going to move into this different career, leaving Robert Webb out in the wasteland. He'll never work again, probably.
Well, we discovered John Thal through the Inspector Morse series, and then years later you discovered him playing Reagan on
Yeah,
refined
Jack Regan on the Sweeney,
the Sweeney, yeah.
which is just unbelievable. You can't believe it's the same. I mean, he looks the same, talks the same, but the attitude is totally different. On Morris, he's this erudite sort of. He can't stand the sight of blood or violence. He's
Opera-loving.
bookish, opera-loving detective. On the Sweeney, it's like Starsky and Hutch go to Britain. I mean, it's like, who cares? Let's beat the living shit out of this guy that we suspect of murder, and
Then
just,
grab the dame and bend her over.
get the
and-
evidence later. You know,
It was
the
so
opening of the Sweeney is just classic '70s. It's this throbbing, in your face music with this
car
muscle car
chases.
pulling up in front of the camera is just amazing. Oh dear me, I didn't get all my sleep today. But Bonnie's changed her sleep schedule, so I had to get up if we were going to record this in time.
Yeah, I'm about to cut you short too because I need to go and fix a few things in the kitchen before I call it quits for the evening.
I experimented with eating 85% cacao chocolate this week to give me a boost, and it does work. But
20 minutes later.
I mean, yeah, it just doesn't last as long. I mean, it does give you a boost, but it doesn't last as long. In a way, it does last longer than caffeine because the theobromine in it is very similar to caffeine. It's a very similar molecule to caffeine, but it has different effects. And there's a guy online years ago I watched, and he said theobromine affects your language centers of your brain, and it makes you just, very verbal, just come up with words, and it does.
We should have that before our next show.
Yeah. But the caffeine aspects of boosting you, and it can be a little bit overwhelming, but then it drops you. Like last night, at 3 in the morning, I had some, and I thought, okay, this will get me through the rest of the night. And for like 20 minutes, I was like, yeah, and then boop, it's gone. And it's really, really strange. There was a time period in like colonial America where drinking chocolate was more prevalent than drinking coffee or tea.
Yeah, you actually had dedicated things called coffee pots. Chocolate pots. In the same way that we have coffee pots and such these days, they had chocolate pots, and they had dedicated china for it and everything. And it was something that especially the posh ladies would do.
That's something they got from the Mesoamerican Indians, because they drank chocolate more than they ate it.
They oftentimes had it with a bit of like a hot pepper or cayenne or something in it.
Yeah. And
When I was working overseas, some friends of mine got married that I worked with, and I found the recipe in a National Geographic book and did it for their
wow. Cool.
wedding party.
When you think about how the world was affected by the Columbian Exchange, I mean, there were no tomatoes in Italian cuisine before America was
We were right
discovered.
down the road at the time. I chose this. We were living right down the road from one of the initial points where Columbus had landed in the New World. So I thought it was very appropriate. And the senior doctor there was also an anthropologist, and we had a museum on the site. And he had discovered, I don't know if it was called La Navidad or something, but it was one of the original sites where they had left behind one of the boats or something behind in the Columbus when he came over and discovered the New World.
There were no potatoes in Ireland.
Yeah.
There were no hot chilies in Indian cuisine or in Korean cuisine. I don't believe there were any honeybees in North America before.
I don't know.
Europeans
I
brought
know
them
that
over.
we brought over fire ants to America.
Fire ants came from South America,
Yeah,
and they
they
escaped
were
and got into
imported.
Florida and moved their way up.
We've got to find a good article or a good documentary on the Columbian.
Exactly. I've been looking for something like that for years.
Yeah.
I don't think earthworms were in North America before they brought them over.
There were a lot of differences, that's for certain. I remember reading some of the early documents of people coming up into the original 13 colonies, and one of the things they brought over were specific types of onions, because they absolutely
Right.
had to have onions. And so what they had here were different.
I'll tell you something else interesting. For some reason, I got to thinking about the giant ground sloths that used to be in North and
Yeah.
South America. They were killed off by the early Native Americans,
Yeah.
which is bizarre to think about. In
We
the
all-
same way that early man in Europe killed off the mammoths by basically learning how to drive them to scare them over a cliff and butcher them once they fell to the bottom of the cliff, the early Indians in America killed off all the ground sloths, and these are huge creatures.
Do you remember going to the state capitol in Georgia when you were a kid? They had a giant sloth reenactment. They had created one.
I don't know about that, but I have a photograph I took of a skeleton of one that we went
This
somewhere.
This one had fur on it. We went to the Tullis Museum and they had that skeleton. But the one at the Georgia State Capitol back in the 70s, 80s, they created one that had fur and everything. It was quite funny, and they had giant claws on it and everything.
Well, there's at the UGA Science Library in the lobby.
Yeah.
They've had one.
Bones of one
in-
there on display.
Yeah, and it's like they've got it displayed as if it's trying to claw its way out of a tar pit. I was a little kid when my dad took me over there to see that.
Yeah, I would have been when my dad was over there at the university too.
They need to clean that thing. They've got it in like this glass
Little thing.
enclosure, and there's like cigarette butts in there, and lollipop wrappers and shit. And it's just so archaic. They need to jazz that up, do something with it.
I wish we could get a grant to have the Natural History Museum brought out of the drawers, as is the Natural History Museum at the University of Georgia is all in drawers. There are only a few select exhibits at the
Yeah.
site, and you have to go over during designated hours. Sometimes you actually have to make appointments to go in because the hours are so limited. But you open the drawers and you see the exhibits there. And that's fine, if you have thousands of thousands that you have, which they do. They have thousands of things in their history exhibits.
They have baleen from Baleen, Wales.
Yeah.
It's like a giant brush, and you can touch it.
But they need something that puts these things out on display for everybody to see without having to open individual drawers.
Yeah. I haven't been to the UGA Science Library in years, but apparently they've renovated the entrance like they did with the main library.
Oh, do they?
But I'm kind of disappointed because the entryway or the entrance to the science library was so inviting to me because it was quiet and it was carpeted, and they had like potted plants, and they had posters from Baker and Taylor up of the two cats, and it was just very cozy. I hate it when they want to make things professional and clinical, like the way that
The two cats.
Baker and Taylor is a company that supplies books to libraries, and their symbol are these two cats, Baker and Taylor, the literary cats.
Oh my God. I
And it's these
didn't realize that.
two big fluffy cats, and they used to give out posters, and you'd hang them up at the library. Anyway, how cozy that was is such a contrast to the rest of the science library, which was just
Sterile.
very sterile, metal shelves. I see
It's
something.
always so cold in there, as if you were in a lab.
Well, one of the things I like about not just the science library, but the main library too, but science library in particular, when you go in the periodical section, they have shelf after shelf of magazines laid out, like the 10 most recent issues of whatever magazine, and they have the most bizarre magazines in the world, like the
Electro
quarterly
basis.
the quarterly report of the Ant Stimulation Behavioral Society or something. And the main library has, like Reggae Today, or or something like that. And it'd be so cool if you had the money. I've heard John Waters does this. He has like hundreds of magazine subscriptions to this weird shit. It'd be so great to have the money to have weird magazines pouring into your mailbox every month. Most bizarre, discreet little niche things to read about. And that's another thing. I've thought about this for years. You'll have and I see these at work. You'll have the Idaho Farmers Digest or something. And it's one thing to think about the people who get the magazines, but then you think there are people. There's an editorial board that makes these magazines, and these people aren't farmers. These are people who graduated from journalism class like in Maine and can't get a job, so they wind up being on the editorial board of the California Raisin Cooperative's annual report thing.
If you think that's weird, when I used to work with Jules was also a photographer. And Jules was a tattooed chick. At one point, she had part of her head shaved and fought the Nazi element in Germany when she lived there. She was cool, but she had a certain subsect of people that she hung around with. And so she would get her business in photography doing these shoots of people. Like she would do, the Go clothing or whatever. And then she would get people that wanted her to photograph the tattoos so that they could post them in their tattoo parlors. Well, this whole subculture that she got involved in, she kind of got a reputation for photographing fringe people. And one day she sat down and she was talking about all the strange people that she'd been photographing. And she herself was out there, okay? But even she would get freaked out. One day she got a call from a lady, and she said, I need some boudoir shots. I understand you do wedding shots and you do boudoir shots also. And she said, yeah, I can do that. I can work you up a package. And she goes, the thing is that I need them for my online site. And she proceeded to describe this lady who was covered in tattoos, who ran a niche porn site with a subscription admission on the site for people who liked people that were extremely tattooed, strangely tattooed, and engaged in certain acts of self-love. And so she said, I'll work with you up to a certain point. And they get in there, and she's doing seductive poses and stuff, because, you can only have so much on the general site before you go beyond. And so the lady said, well, what about something for inside once they go past the portal and they've bought access to a certain level? And before they actually get the live camera, etc. She said, what do you mean? And she goes, I was thinking of a taco shot. And Jules said, she goes, I like tacos, but not those kind of tacos. And I had to tell the lady, no. So there are definitely niches.
Oh, yeah.
Every aspect of science, culture, etc.
I would, like Diane Arbus back in the 60s, 70s, she used to just wander New York City and ask people, can I take a picture of you? I wish I had the guts to do something like that, to walk around Athens or somewhere and go, hi, I'm a photographer. I'm just taking random shots of people. Can I take a picture of you?
I actually did that a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah?
I was covering the rally it was a protest march that went from UGA to the Arches, and it was protesting Trump's first term immigration policies. He was cracking down on immigration. They were doing the Muslim ban and all these other crazy things. And so I went down. The big meeting and rally was at the Tate Center, and then it would culminate in a march to the Arches. And so as I'm milling through the crowd taking pictures, I had to stop and say, "May I take your picture?" And so later I posted these online, and people were like, "Oh my God, that's me," And there was this one guy that had he was a Palestinian, and he had on the scarf that they wear, and his was blue and white. And I had taken the photograph and converted it into black and white, and he reached out to me. He goes, "I'd really like to use this photograph, but can you turn it back into color for me?" So it was really cool being able to go down there and interact with people, and they were pleased that there was somebody covering it and photographing it, and they all showed their posters. They were happy, yay!
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that I went through a weirdo phase where I was about 20, 21, somewhere in there. Maybe, yeah, 20, 21, 22. And I dressed weird, and I'd wear weird homemade adornments and stuff. And years ago, I was downtown walking around sort of in front of where Barnett's newsstand used to be, and this guy asked, "Can I take a picture of you got interesting hair? Can I take a picture of you?" I'm like, okay, because I used to have long, bleached blonde hair, and it was just all a mess. And after he took the picture, I said, "What's this for?" He goes, "Well, I do a sociology class, and I'm taking pictures of different kinds of hairstyles and shoes and stuff." I said, "Well, you didn't even look at my shoes." And he looked at my shoes, and I had these shoes, and one of them I had dropped melted pink candle wax all over, and the other one I had like yellow and black magic marker dots or all kinds of shit on. He goes, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll take a picture of that too." I was thinking about that, but also I was thinking about the other day when I worked at Campus Mail the first time. I had this homemade necklace that I used to wear that had all these weird things on it, like bits of metal I'd found and like children's building blocks, and I'm like, yeah, I had my period of being a weirdo.
I now know what the picture should be for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go take a picture of the green 3D sculpture on your wall that has the baby's hand in it.
Okay, well maybe, yeah. I had something else in mind, but we'll see.
That would be perfect for this, though.
Okay. Let's see where we're at on the.
Yeah, it's late. I've got the red stuff down in the kitchen.
All right, this is a good enough. All right, so anything else?
Nah, goodbye.
Goodbye.